is the Orange Zone, sponsored by Apex Entertainment.
Hi, everybody. Welcome in to an episode of the Orange Zone podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston. We got SU basketball legend Lawrence Moten with us today, here to talk some hoops. We're going to talk men's hoops, women's hoops. But first, wanted to let you guys know about an exciting event that we're doing for the second time now. We have a live podcast coming up at Apex Entertainment on February 6th. It's going to start around 7 o'clock. There's a live audience, so feel free to come, bring some signs. Moten's going to be there, Mungro's going to be there, as well as Ashley and I will be doing the shows from there, so you can even come a little earlier if you want to kind of see the behind the scenes on how some of that stuff works. And we'll be talking everything, but predominantly we're talking about Syracuse on their way up, basketball having some challenges. So come out to that. Should be a really exciting time.
Yes, and also worth noting that's in place of our podcast for next week. So that is coming up next week. We won't be doing the Tuesday show. It'll be on February 6th on Thursday live at Apex.
Really exciting stuff. Thanks for Apex, as per usual, for hosting that. We're really excited about it. Okay, let's get into some basketball. We're going to start on the men's side. This week, Syracuse faced Clemson, or really, I guess I should say last week. Syracuse faced Clemson and Pittsburgh. They lost to Clemson 86-72. They lost to Pittsburgh 77-73. So again, a little bit of a tighter matchup, but both of those preceded a win against Notre Dame. And I remember then we sort of talked about, was that just a fluke, or is this team really on the way up? How do you guys feel since that point?
Yeah, well, I think we were sitting here last week, right? So 2 losses since we last spoke. Clemson, I would say a little more expected. They're towards the top of the ACC. Pittsburgh, I was there on Saturday on the sidelines shooting the game. You kind of felt like that was a game they should have won. It was within their grasp multiple times throughout that game, and they just couldn't really close it out at the end. They were playing much better basketball than Pittsburgh in the first half. Pittsburgh was shooting terribly from the floor, missing a lot of shots. And I think it came down to the end. I mean, Syracuse, just that defense, we've been talking about it all year long, just getting back on defense just wasn't good enough against Pittsburgh on Saturday. And Pitt also really closed it out at the end there with making their free throws, and that's something this team struggled with as well. So to answer your question, I guess Notre Dame not being one of the best teams in the ACC, you won against Notre Dame, but then against, better and more comparable competition, you couldn't get it done.
Yeah. If anything I could say is it's going to get tougher as the season progresses. The Clemson game, Clemson's a tough team with a lot of veteran players, and they just bullied us, plain and simple. I watched that game. At one point, it was no point in that game where I felt like we were in the game.
Yeah.
They took control from start to finish, and we took an L, came back home and played Pittsburgh. They fought and fought hard, but, we just have to find ways to win games when needed as far as guys stepping it up. Lampkin played well, rebounding the ball and doing his job. The thing is with us this year, it's like if 1 or 2 guys are playing well, the other 3 are playing bad. We haven't had one game yet, I don't think this year, where I can say all 5 guys played together as a team.
Yeah.
It is funny that he says that, because I will say, in my mind, I was thinking today, this is not a talentless team. Like, I'd go on record and say this is a team that does have raw talent, and yet they don't win.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, well, to speak to your point, Moten, I think that with the starting 5, right, that's gotten shaken up a little bit with Donnie's injury, but we've also seen it just shake up a little bit as the season progresses. I don't think Autry has really figured out the combinations that he loves out there yet on the floor, because I'm not really sure he's in love with any of them. It's kind of just a mix and match, but none of them really are far and away the best. You know what I mean?
I do, and that's a tough situation to be in when you're at this point in the season and you don't know your identity, right? Because you don't want to keep on sending out bad combinations. You don't want to continue to try doing the same thing over and over again that's not working. However, I feel like by continuing to send out all different lineups, continuing to switch things up, it's sort of hard for anybody, I would think, to develop any sort of real chemistry because things are so consistently changing.
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation? Have you been on teams like that?
No, I don't want to say I've been on teams like that, but as far as teams gelling and having chemistry. It's hard to figure out, like you said, when coaches are switching up players and you don't know who's the starting five is going to be. It's almost, I would call it a trust issue. Does Adrian Autry, our coach, really trust certain players at certain times? And I don't think he does. And right now, it's like we go back to what we were talking about as far as him finding his style as a coach. We still don't know that, if you ask me. And hopefully he figures it out and things change.
Yeah, usually the whole, you can play 7, you can play 8, you can play 9 is talked about as a good thing, but I think in this case it's actually a negative because he doesn't really, like you said, know who he trusts, right? Chris Bell was starting at the beginning of the year, then kind of went on record saying he prefers to not start, he prefers to come off the bench when he's struggling. Jaquan Carlos was starting, now he's not. So the mixing and the matching, starting and just combinations-wise, I think it's been tough for them to get in any sort of rhythm.
Yes.
I agree with that. But it is tough. It's like in what world is having more guys who are talented a bad thing? Like, it should not be a bad thing. There should be a way where they're able to work that out. Like, you would want to, in any situation, I think, have a deeper bench and have guys who can work in those roles. So when you talk about it being a trust issue, is that more on Autry to figure out what his style is as a leader and then everyone else follows? Or is it about recruiting or bringing in from the portal different kinds of players?
Well, it's definitely about bringing in the players that'll fit your style as a coach. I also feel that a lot of these players haven't been playing as good as they were last year. I go back to Bell. Bell had a solid year last year, and this year he looks like he doesn't know what he wants to do. So that also comes with having strong inner self-confidence in yourself as a player, and I don't see that in a lot of these players that we have on our team. As far as knowing their role, knowing how to what it takes to help our team be successful. Everybody's kind of in a scramble mode, and what do we do, and how do we play, or how we're going to do it this week, instead of actually laying down the law and knowing what we're going to do to win games.
If you were Autry, would you have really tried to stick with like a starting 5, maybe 6, or do you agree that with this roster he kind of had no choice but to throw darts at the board?
Yes, with this roster, it's a no-brainer. He has no choice.
Yeah.
To try to pick the pieces to try to make the thing go and be successful, and if anything, as a player, it's like no excuse. You're going to play. So just do your job when you get in. So, I've never actually been on teams like that. Coach Boeheim, when I was playing here at Syracuse, we were probably 8 or 9 deep. Where we had definitely 8, but a true 9-man roster where we knew if we put somebody else in, we knew that they were going to do the job. And right now, they don't know pretty much what they want to do.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it almost, when you talk about like the identity and that sort of feeling, confusing for people and what needs to happen. I know we've discussed like the orange standard. I sort of had a breakthrough as we're sitting here talking about why I feel like the orange standard just feels like this sort of wafty term that doesn't mean anything. Like, it's because, let's just say if you compare it to like a term like DART, which obviously is the Syracuse football's identity. I don't know if you have heard that at all, but Fran Brown would always say DART throughout the season. And it stood for disciplined, accountable, detailed, accountable, relentless, and tough. But those are 4 actual qualities that you can point to that he wanted the team to have and to resemble in some way. It was like a part of the team's character. Like, what does the orange standard actually stand for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we've been talking about that since the season started. And I've also launched a fun experiment with that whole concept in the locker room, like with interviewing the guys. I've said to Lampkin or to JJ, what is the orange standard in terms of your eyes? Like, what do you think of it as? And every time you kind of get this good response, but kind of just like, well, we want to go out there and we want to play hard and we want to win games and the season's not over and we're trying to make a run. And you get all the right answers on the surface, but it's not, I guess to your point, it's not distinct qualities. It's, well, we want to go out there and play hard. Well, of course you want to play hard. I mean, I would hope that the coaching staff is trying to get you to play hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, again, it's like that's better than not saying that. It's so obvious that all of these players want to go out there and accomplish something. But I think it's almost like I think that this staff needs to be brave enough to lay out what those goals are, you know?
Absolutely.
Like Fran Brown said he wanted to go out there and win a national championship, and he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And he said, I fell short of my goal.
Yeah.
But at least he had a goal. Like, that's my point, is really successful people have a goal and say it out loud. They might achieve it, they might not. But you can know that they went in really trying to make something happen and wanting to achieve it because they were brave enough to say it.
Yeah. And the orange standard, I'm glad you guys helped me out a little bit because I did want to know what's the definition. So as we move forward, you know, that's something that we need to take heed and understand and even ask Coach, you know, what is the orange standard and what does it mean?
Yeah.
So you'll have a breakdown of the orange standard. So, but it's all new. You know, let's understand that this is actually this is his second year as a head coach. You know, not an assistant coach for 10, 11 years. You're actually a head coach. You're the head man in charge. So how you view your standard and how you coach and how you motivate is all about what you do. And he's trying to do it his way, and we're still trying to figure that out as media.
I'd be interested to know, and this is just one of those things that we're never going to know because he'll never admit it probably, but Fran Brown, like you said, made those goals so public. Adrian Autry didn't. That's okay. Different coaching style. Different things work for different coaches. But I wish that we could know at the beginning of the year what kind of his thought process and goals were for this team. If he thought it was a tournament team genuinely, if he thought maybe the goal was 20 wins, you know, if he had a certain number of wins in the ACC that he felt would have been sufficient. Again, never going to know that, just speculating, but I'd be interested to know what that thought was from him and if it's changed as the season's progressed.
Yes.
That's really interesting because I will say I just think like this is just me zooming way out, but I just even think if you just looked at like the psychology of having goals and achieving them, I even feel like just for me in my own personal life, like it's easier to achieve goals when there are some numbers and quantifiable things involved in that. I'm not saying the Orange Standard needs to be an acronym or anything like that, but like if you go in saying we want to win X amount of games, then you can know quantifiably at the end of the season, did you do it or you didn't?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I think there's power in that, even if you don't accomplish it, just knowing and everybody else knowing this is what we're trying to achieve. And then all of a sudden, if you raise the bar a little higher, then all of a sudden players raise the bar a little higher too because they know what they're trying to achieve, you know?
Yeah.
I think, and I'm not a head coach, I'm not claiming to be, but if I was, that would be important to me, would be to lay out high goals that are achievable, but you're reaching for the stars because I really do think that's how good programs become great and probably how bad programs become good.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, the goal around here should always be to make the NCAA tournament because that was the standard and that was the goal that was met for so many years in a row for a long time. But since that's not been possible for the last 3 to 4 years, all right, well, then maybe you do have to take a step back and say what would be the smaller, more incremental goals that would eventually get us there, you know?
And I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with that just to hear somebody at least say, you know, this is what we're working towards or whatever it is, you know?
And I think that's why this year is hard for fans to kind of take in too, because last year it was his first season as a head coach. Didn't make the tournament, but they won 20 games. So you could at least say, or 19 if you don't want to count that Chaminade game. I know some of our viewers have issue with that.
I
20 games
take
overall.
issue with that issue for the record.
Well, it was a D2 game, whatever. There's
20
squabbles.
wins.
20 wins. 20 wins. You can at least look at that and say, okay, it was his first year as a head coach. We won 20 games. You know, we feel like we're taking steps in the right direction, and next year's the year we get back to the tournament. I think to have such a backslide this year it's just a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it's very tough to swallow right now, you know, but when we were talking about the Orange Standard and what we expected, when we had Coach Boeheim, the standard was 20 wins guaranteed.
Yeah.
Guaranteed 20 and guaranteed tournament, NCAA tournament when he was coaching. So we kind of got used to knowing what to expect with our teams that, under Coach Boeheim, and now we're under Coach Red, and he's trying to figure out his way. And I know it sounds crazy, but, you know, it's going to take time. It's truly going to take time. And, you know, I was a head coach, so I can honestly say this. I coached professionally in Rochester and went 20-1, and I won a championship. And one of the things I always told myself when I got the coaching job that head coaches, when I was a player, never did, and I always wish they did, but they never did, was tell each player their role in front of the whole team. That was one of the things that I told myself I would do, and I did it, and it truly, truly helped. You know, if you knew when you sit your team down and break down every player individually in front of each other, it makes everything easier. You wouldn't wonder, you're not wondering why this guy's taking all the shots, or or this guy's the great defender. Because as a head coach, you've actually explained it and told everybody what to expect.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think the part you brought up before as well with when you were playing here, right? Players came in from high school, as a freshman and expected to go to the tournament. That was the standard in a sense. That was the quantifiable standard. So you have to get back to there, somehow. But the high school recruits that we've talked about so much coming in next season, well, what exactly do they expect? They wouldn't have committed to come here if they didn't, if they weren't sold by the coaching staff that was possible and whatnot. But what exactly are their expectations? It's interesting.
Yeah,
It is. And I appreciate you saying what you did about Boeheim, because again, look at the success that he had by laying out that standard. And all the fans even knew what to expect. Everybody really bought in. That's what makes me sad. And I say this as someone who did not grow up here and don't necessarily remember these times. But like when people talk about, basketball under Boeheim, like a lot of the conversation right now is it's just not the same as it used to be. Like, remember how excited we used to be to go into the Dome and to watch Syracuse men's basketball? Like, it really was this source of pride. And I say that in a way, like, it makes me feel bummed out for this team. I also could see, though, why it feels like so much pressure, for a guy like Autry to know that you really are carrying the whole city of Syracuse when you have an orange team. Like, that is how much people really value going to these games and watching these players. So there's a lot there, and I'm hoping that he's able to figure it out. But I wish that he would speak more publicly, honestly, about what some of his goals are. I truly think that would be to his benefit and could potentially get the fans to even buy in a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. And just for the record, Jim Boeheim, things slipped in the last few years under his tenure, too. It wasn't like Autry came in here and took over a perennial, powerhouse full of five-star recruits. He didn't. So, just saying.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. That's important to point out.
And it's a new time. I tell people all the time now, it's not looking at the great high school player right now. They've broken it up. So if you ask me personally, it's the first thing these coaches do now once the season is over, they go to the portal. Second is JUCO. Third is prep school. And then fourth is the high school player. So the high school player is looked at last. So my whole point to this is, if you're not top 250 in the country, why are you asking for a scholarship?
No, listen, it's a new world now.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, there are coaches who really saw the landscape and said, I'm out.
Yep.
Yeah.
F that.
Yeah,
I don't want to
absolutely.
coach in this time anymore.
Jim Larinaga, the list goes on.
Perhaps smartly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're
Nick
like,
Saban,
I just don't.
football,
Right.
you can look at all sports.
All the sports.
Either
yeah.
not interested in recruiting that way, upset with what the landscape has become, whatever the reason may be. They said, you know what, I'm gonna step aside. Like I've had
Yeah.
enough. But at this point, obviously there's a lot that needs to happen, and we always admit that we're sort of in the wild west of college athletics right now. But you need to be playing that game.
Yeah.
You need to get in the ring if
Yep.
you're here and
Yep.
you want to be here. That's really all there is to it. There are new rules, and it sucks when you've been playing a game for a while and then they change the rules on you, but that's what has happened.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of be flexible and adapt, or else you're going to get left behind. It really is as simple as that, in my opinion.
100%.
Anyone have anything else to say on men's basketball before we switch gears to the women's side for a second?
No, just keep fighting, guys. Keep playing hard, and we're going to be with you regardless.
Good message.
Sound message.
They go out to the West Coast this week. That's another thing on the new era, right? Conference realignment. We're out on the Pacific Coast time. So I believe they play Stanford Wednesday night, Cal on Saturday. Those games are like 10 and 11 o'clock Eastern time. So stay up late if you want to watch this team. But then they come back to the Dome next week, and good old Duke comes to town. Number 2 team in the country will join us at the Dome next week.
And can I say something on it? Now, through all the little turmoil and losing and winning and that we're going through right now this year, if we beat Duke next week, I don't want to go ahead of the game, but I am. If we beat Duke next week, I think mentally Not
Sure.
the record-wise, but mentally, it would change the morale of our university and our team.
The "we are so back, it's so over" meter would, it'd be "we are so back" for a minute.
Yeah.
I literally would pray for some sort of morale boost like that would show that anything is possible.
Absolutely.
So that's the one great thing, I guess, about being a true underdog, if you want to look at it that way, is that if you do happen to take down one of the monsters, then all of a sudden people can look at you differently. And that's kind of the beauty in college athletics and college basketball. Yeah. So good luck to Syracuse this week. Like Ashley said, tomorrow, 11 o'clock, Saturday against Cal, 10 p.m., and then Duke next Wednesday. So yeah, some late games, weird times, I have to say, especially for TV. Brutal out here. Don't expect highlights till the next day. Sorry
Atlantic
about
Coast Conference.
You know how it is. We wanted to take a quick beat on the women's basketball team as well, because they had sort of an interesting week last week. The last few games were as follows, right? Sunday on January 19th, they get destroyed. Whooped by Boston College, 92-51. FLJ, really not happy, extremely disappointed. Then they go up against NC State, who now at this moment is ranked 17th in the country. And they lose 74-66, but honest to God, that was because of a few free throws at the end and a technical. They was legitimately either tied or Syracuse having the lead most of the game.
They were up 10 at the half.
Legit.
Came down to the final minute.
10 at the half.
Yeah.
So obviously, yes, disappointing in some sense, but I did want to throw them a little props on that, because honestly, that was sort of one of those games where, again, you think, well, you know what? Their record may not reflect it, but there are some really good players on this team. And if they can take a team like NC State down to the wire, what else can they do? Then they go up against Clemson. That was on Sunday. And they win 67-55. So did want to give them a little bit of props, just a little shout out, because I did think, to have sort of a heartbreaker like that against NC State and then come back out and win it, that showed me a little something about the team that the direction that this team is headed in for the moment.
Yeah. Coach Jack, is a personal friend of mine. She's a great motivator. She's always been a team player as far as wanting to see her players do well, and she's going to give them credit when credit's due. But if they're not playing well, she's going to call them out too, and that's one of the things I've always liked about her. She's great spirit, and she's a good coach. She showed that in the past, and hopefully, these girls will get back on and try to get on the winning track. And you have to go through bumps and bruises. Let's also understand that this is her second year here also. Or third? Is it second or third? Third?
I believe.
Yeah.
I think third.
Yeah, going on her third year here. And she's done very well. And she's a homegrown female who's born and raised in Syracuse, so she knows what it takes. She's a former player whose jersey's up in the rafters, so she knows what it takes to win. We're gonna just have to be by her side and let her figure it out.
Yeah, the Clemson win stuck out to me because talked about it on the TV on Sunday night. They went into that game and going into the fourth quarter, they were down by 7. You saw that from them a lot of times last year. They'd be down going into, they had a nickname for it last year. They'd come in and close out and win it. Mm-hmm. That was with De'Asia Fair. De'Asia Fair would take over. We knew there was going to be a little bit of a fall off this year when you don't have your star, one of the greatest to ever play women's college basketball. But it was more of a team effort to win that Clemson game. I think it was Kyra Wood and Isabella Verajao both had double-doubles in that game. You saw a freshman, Madeline Potts, come in and get double-digit points. So to me, it was just a well-rounded team win, and Coach Jack spoke after the game, and she said, I hope we can use this as a building block and motivation for the rest of the season.
I also honestly think that even that NC State game showed a lot about that team and a lot about FLJ and her philosophy. She, in her press conference, one of her, and I feel like she always has a classic one-liner thrown in there, but she said, "You're not a loser if you throw it all out there on the line." And she's like, we really did. We gave it our best effort. And I like the fact that that's something that you could tell is an important value to her, because I watched most of that game, and I will tell you that I 100% agreed with that. And I think even as a fan, it makes you feel more at ease, even if your team loses, to know that they truly gave it their best effort. Yep. I think as a coach, that's probably all you can ask, even if the effort doesn't end up being good enough. You know what I mean? And to your point, what you said about the men's team.
Yeah.
If not every player was playing or performing at their 100%, I don't know if that would constitute as giving it their best effort, and maybe that's why fans feel some frustration. So just a little comparison there.
Yeah. Well, back to what I said a couple of weeks ago. Most teams play to the style of their coach. If you have a fiery coach, you're going to have a fiery team. If you have a laid-back coach, you're pretty much going to have a laid-back type of team. Not saying they're not giving their all. So it all revolves around the coach and how he projects things and how he gives it back to his players, and they have to give it all in return.
Out of curiosity, this is my last question for you, but I know you have said that frequently in the past, like players are going to play to the style of their coach. You having been, like you said, a former head coach, obviously also being a former player, is there anything in his style that you wish you could see more of, Adrian Autry? Like, is there any part of his style that you wish, hey, I wish he would add a little bit of this or a little bit of that?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think he needs to be more vocal. Not saying he's not, but, playing with Adrian, he was my point guard at Syracuse. He was a talker. Never shut up. He wanted to direct guys and get guys in right position, which was fine because that's what point guards do. And if you did well, he was the first one to motivate you and give you that fire. So, just a little bit more motivation. When the referee makes a call, let the referee know that you don't appreciate that call. Just don't wave it off and just move on. So just a little bit more fiery, because I know him as a fiery person.
Okay, that's good insight.
Very
Thanks
good.
for sharing.
Yeah.
Well, hey, again, you guys, we want to see you. Come out February 6th, Apex Entertainment. Hang out with us. You can meet us. You can meet Moten, Mungro. It's going to be a good time. Otherwise, we will see you back here next week. Thanks so much for joining us.